See, God's not impressed, I think, by us taking risk. I think he's impressed by us being obedient even when it's risky. So that's what we're talking about today is the obedience factor. Will we be obedient to God? Will we do what he has actually said for us to do? Will we do what he's put in the Bible and the invitation that he calls us to follow Jesus? Even Matthew 28, it says, go out and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them and teaching them to obey what Jesus had taught. We're talking about obedience today, and so to do that, we're looking at Matthew chapter 25. Jesus was teaching his disciples. He was also interacting with Pharisees, and he was talking about, someday the Son of Man's going to come back. Someday I'm going to come back. Someday I'm going to return, and here's what it's actually going to be like. Check this out, Matthew 25, verse 14. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. Notice, it's not the servant's wealth, it's the master's wealth being entrusted to the servants. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. This word entrusted, it was normal in this time for especially someone who was very wealthy, very powerful. They would take their finances and they would entrust stewards to it, people that worked for them, reported to them, people that they oversaw. He would entrust his wealth to him with an expectation that there would be a return, that you would take it, you'd put it to work, you'd do something with it. So the master entrusts his servants with his wealth, but it's a very significant amount of wealth. In fact, this bag of gold, right, or this bag of gold, it was actually equivalent to around 20 years of wages. So to one, he gives 100 years of wages. To another, he gives 40 years of wages. And to the third, he gives about 20 years of wages. And it says each according to his ability. You following so far? So let's see what happens here if we keep reading. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work. Catch that, he went at once. He went immediately. He went right to it and he put the money to work and he gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more, but the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. Here's what I want you to catch. The first 2 were obedient. The first 2 understood the assignment. In fact, I would argue with you, all 3 of them understood the assignment, but the first 2 understood, and their understanding led to an action of obedience. They took their master's wealth, they put it to work. I don't know if that means in the stock market, I don't know if that means real estate, I don't know if that means, small investments here and there, whatever it was, they took it and were diligent with the command that the master had left with them. Take this and turn something for it. Use it. Do something with it. The purpose we're talking about money today is because money is often a microcosm for how we relate to God or other people. The servants understood that the master had given them a task, a responsibility that they were required to carry out. And so their posture was, I'm going to be obedient to the master even before I know how it's going to work out. The first 2 had no idea that their profits would double the original investment. But here's what's funny about it. It was all the master's anyway. It was all his. Their job, their duty, their responsibility was to be obedient, to put it to work, to go after it, to work hard, and to be prepared for the day that the master returns to have something to show for it. But the third one does something different. Third one takes a shovel, takes this bag of gold, 20 years worth of wages, a significant amount of money. Takes it, finds a spot out back. I don't know if he goes to his yard, he goes to a nature preserve. I don't know where he goes, but wherever he goes, he digs a hole, he marks the spot, he remembers it, he puts it in the ground, and he walks away. He does nothing. If you notice even the text, it just says he went off. It doesn't say he went immediately like the first 2. It's just he went off. He got to it when he got to it. He'll deal with it when it gets around to it. Before we go on with the story, I want to ask you, is there a servant in this story that you identify with? Is there one that you would look at your life, you'd look at maybe what God has given you or entrusted to you, you'd look at your time or your energy, your wealth, you look at your gifts or your talents, your skills, if you look at what God has given you, are you representative of one that you feel like, wow, I'm like the one with 5. I feel like I have an abundance. I feel like I have a lot. I have a lot that I've been entrusted with from God. Maybe you more identify with the middle one. I've been given some from the master, probably not as much as others that are around me or in my sphere of influence, but certainly more than others that are around me in my sphere of influence. I see myself in the middle. Maybe that's you, or maybe you're the last one. And you see yourself as one who goes, I haven't been entrusted with much. I look at everybody else, it seems like everybody else has more. They got more opportunity, more money, more wealth, more time, more freedom, more everything. God's given them so much more, and I've only got this little. There's something I think that happens in our heart posture, especially when we look horizontally, that if we see ourselves as the one who has won, sometimes we get resentful. I think sometimes we look at God and we say, why one for us? What have I done to deserve that? How come I can't have what they have? And sometimes our heart postures, we start getting angry or frustrated. Our heart posture that desires more, wants more, sometimes that turns into a very different type of attitude that relates to God. And remember, money is a microcosm. It's this small little window into maybe how we operate in a variety of different ways in our lives. Maybe you're the one that you go, I'm always overlooked at work. I'm always overlooked in the classroom, or I'm always overlooked in my neighborhood. I'm always overlooked in my family. I'm always the one that gets the least, and the least is expected from me, and so it turns, right? It's like, maybe I won't be obedient. Maybe I won't do what's expected of me. Maybe I won't do what God has actually asked me to do, because what's it going to make? What difference is it going to make anyway? Which one do you identify with now? Man, if I'm being honest, I identify with all 3 of them at different phases or stages of life, sometimes all 3 at the same time. Just depends on what you're talking about. If we camp in the lane of money, just for a little bit, and use this as an illustration to get in. Which one do you identify with? Let's keep reading here. After a long time, the master of those servants returned, and he settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The word I want to camp on, just in this little section here, is faithful. Faithful. I don't know what you think of when you hear that word, read that word, see that word, but faithful, right? Sometimes I think like, oh, these guys had faith, right? They had faith that if they did what they were supposed to, there would be an outcome. And our often, sometimes our intention is we look for the outcomes and we go, yeah, there it is. That's what I was after. That's what we wanted. Our temptation in this story is to celebrate the fact that the first 2 doubled their money. Especially as Americans, we look at the outcome. We look at the bottom line. Were they in the black or were they in the red? Woo, doubled it. Way to go. Those guys are awesome. That's our temptation in this passage. But I think what we overlook is that word faithful, because it doesn't just mean they had faith that the outcome would be good. The word faithful actually translated means in the transaction of business, in the execution of commands, or in the discharge of official duties. That's what faithful means. Faithful is a fancy word for obedient. The first 2 were praised, celebrated, high-fived by their master, not because they had faith, because they were obedient. Because they saw from the very beginning to the very end, everything that I have been entrusted with does not belong to me, it belongs to my master. And because it belongs to my master, the command that my master gave to me requires me to act out of it. to be obedient to it, which means the outcome is belonging to the master. If they double or triple or quadruple their money, the end is the same. It is still the master's. The only thing they can be held accountable for is their level of obedience. The first two are praised for it, celebrated for it. Remember, Jesus is the one teaching his disciples, saying, this is what it's going to be like when I come back. I will celebrate and high five the one that is obedient to me, not just in money, but in every area of their lives. But what about the one that's not obedient? What about the one that chooses not to? Here's what I want you to hear if we could boil it down to a statement. The statement would be this: obedience is the outcome that God is after. So often we're focused on, well, what's the outcome of obedience? That will determine whether or not I should do what I feel like I'm being told to do or asked to do or led to do. We look at the outcome. The outcome that God looks at is our heart of obedience. So let's read the last piece of the story here and see what happens. It says, then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man. Notice how he starts. Notice the posture, the attitude. There's this undercurrent of like, before I'm about to tell you what I'm about to tell you, I would like to tell you that it's basically your fault. That's how this is coming across. The word hard, this particular use of the word hard is only used a couple times in Scripture, and it actually means harsh. It is the same word that is used in the Bible to describe Pharaoh when Pharaoh was at his worst to the Israelite people, to God's people in Egypt. When he worked them harder and harder and harder, and then he took things that they needed to produce what he was demanding they would produce. That's the word that was chosen to describe Pharaoh as harsh, mean, wicked, unreasonable. That is how this servant begins his interaction with his master. I knew you to be a Pharaoh of sorts. I know how harsh you can be. Here, if we continue it, harvesting where you have not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid and went out and I hid your gold in the ground. See? Here's what belongs to you. Do you feel the difference of the tension between the first two and the third one? I mean, put yourself in the master's shoes, right? You have 3 kids. The first 2 function like that, and the last one functions like this. What's your posture towards number 3? Maybe you're a business owner and you have employees, and your employees come to you and they bring the same kind of report. The first 2 did what you asked them to do. The third one didn't because it was your fault. What's your posture towards that employee? I just want us to get at the heart here. It's not so much the outcome of obedience that the master cares about. The outcome the master cares about is obedience itself. Did you do what I asked you to do? Were you faithful? The third one just blames him. It's your fault. In fact, you're so harsh and you're so scary, and I worried that if I invested, if I actually took what you gave me seriously, that what if it didn't go well? Then I can't imagine being on the other side of you. So instead of being obedient and risking it because of obedience, I decided to play it safe, and by play it safe meant disobedience. That's what I chose. That's what I've decided. That doesn't fly with the master, just like it doesn't fly with God. The opportunity he gives us is to be obedient, not to determine whether or not we'll be obedient based on the outcome. Who are you in the story? Who do you relate to? Who do you want to be? Like we said earlier, I don't think God is impressed when we take risk. I think God is impressed when we are obedient to him, even in the face of risk. His heart is obedience for his children, just like the heart of a parent is obedience for their child. Would you obey me? Would you follow me? Would you trust me? Because I can lead you to a place you cannot get to on your own. because I can do far more with obedience than you can with effort. If you will trust me, if you will follow me, if you will lean on me, even just like we were saying, I can lead you to a place you could never go to on your own, but it all hinges on obedience. Hey, thanks for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed it. Hope it made an impact on your life somehow. And if it did, don't forget to like or subscribe or share it on social media with your friends as well. We always love seeing you, and remember that you can join us live every single Sunday.